Got it ready?
It is preparing to stream.
Okay, let's do the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome to the meeting this morning. We start out with the agenda approval. Any changes? Oh, okay. We have a motion.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second that.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay. And then public input. There's no public, so that is done already. Well, you can speak either way. I mean, a department head or part of the public.
Excuse me. Good morning.
Oh, good morning.
That's all I was trying to get out of my froggy throat.
Okay. All right. Consent agenda. Any discussion, any questions, anything to be pulled?
I didn't have anything.
Okay. Have a motion to approve.
Second.
Yeah, I'll move. Dave seconds.
That's what he is, right?
Okay. All in favor? Any, aye? Any opposed? None? Okay. And employee recognition. We have got several. In the sheriff's department, we have Neal Warren, patrol sergeant, began his position full-time on March 26th of this year. Ashley Irvin Tupper, a dispatcher, jailer, part-time position, began on March 31st. And in solid waste, we have Arlene Breitweiser, administrative support, solid waste, began full-time position on March 27th. And we thank them all for all new employees, right? Yeah, all for joining Hubbard County. On to the highway, Jed.
Good morning.
Good morning.
A few things on the agenda for today, so we'll start with the fun one. Discussion and review of quotes we received for a batwing mower replacement. Background on this is in 2017, the decision was made to purchase a 20-foot wide batwing. So you got the center unit, and then there's two side mowers on that as well. And the intent at the time was there's certain ditches that we can use something that's that wide and it'll cover more ground. But what we're finding out is that there's really only one road that we're using this on, that's Cassaw 4 with such a wide right of way out there. And unfortunately, the 20-foot mower it's just too much for what we use, and going up and over all the approaches and whatnot, this thing is taking a beating. And so we've been repairing it quite a bit. And we've got a couple other 15-foot mowers that we utilize that we don't have these kind of problems with. And so at this point, we reached out to the Midwest Machinery down in Wadena and asked if there was any interest in having that, taking that in as a trade. And they said, yeah, actually there is. And they're very familiar with it. Any of the repairs that we've done on it has gone through them for parts, and so they understand it. And they offered up $13,000 on trade. So if you go back 6 years, we paid $19,900, so it seems like a pretty good trade, but then you see the purchase price of a new one, and the pricing has gone up. And so, anyway, we would like to move forward. It's not a budgeted item, so it would have to come out of equipment reserves. But we would like to move forward with trading this in on a new 15-foot unit. It just works better for us. We have more applications for it than this one. And so, we had the two quotes. You see Midwest Machinery from Wadena is the low. Bobcat of Bemidji was not interested in taking it in on trade, so that would be $48,105 for that mower. Different brand. That brand is consistent with what the state uses, but for us, it just seems like maybe it's a little bit of overkill and too expensive, so. If you're willing to entertain that, I would recommend that we do trade it in on the 15-footer from Midwest Machinery in Wadena for the difference of $19,000, total quote of $32,000.
This is one of those that goes down like
Yep.
that? Okay, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of ditches, 20 feet, you're already starting to go back up.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, it sounded good, and they were gonna be able to cover all kinds of ground, but it's just not working. We're having much better luck with the 15-footers. It's not as tough on them. Yeah. It's-
Jed, do you think there'll be a time this summer when there won't be snow in the ditch?
I wish I could answer that, but ask me later today, and I'll tell you no.
Is your crew ready to go?
We're ready to go.
All right.
Been ready all year. It's been quite the year for them, but they've done well.
Yeah, they were talking in MRC that
Yeah.
a lot of crews are starting to get a little fatigue.
Yeah, it's a long year.
Accidents have happened.
Accidents,
Yeah.
yep.
Yep. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
good. Yeah, everybody seems good. The morale seems just fine, but they like the overtime, but enough is enough. We're ready to move on, so hopefully this is the last blast for the year.
I'll move to approve the low quote.
Okay.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Very good, thank you. Second on the agenda, we've got review and approve bid for Project SAP 029-599-010. This is our bridge replacement for Nevis Township going out to the island on Beltane. And if you recall, we tried to let this project back in September, does that sound right?
Yes, it does, yeah.
And when we received those bids, they seemed very high. Well, what we didn't know was that there's difficulties in constructing this that's gonna require sheet piling on both sides of that bridge, to block that area off of any water flow so they have a dry hole to work in. That combined with the lack of availability of box culverts and the actual design of this that includes two very long 24-foot aprons on each side. The estimate that, we worked on with the consultant, it just didn't really match. And so when we originally rejected those bids, did a little bit of review on it, said, can we change the design on this? Had the consultant look at a couple different options. It really came back to this, and we were urged by the state at that point to go back out for bids, do it as planned. We changed the length of the project a little bit to drop the elevation on it, which did save some materials, and also helped blend into some of the entrances out there. But all in all, it's very close to the original one. They didn't want to go forward with a variance on the design speed. They, if at all possible, they want to avoid that. And so the state said, we have special town bridge money, so relet the project and see how it comes in. And so we received 3 bids last week that were very, very similar to what we saw back in September. So I guess that's a good thing in that, they're probably legitimate bids, and we didn't see the price go up. And so the box culverts haven't changed, and so with the 3 that we received, Landwehr Construction out of St. Cloud is the low at $996,191.23, and we would recommend going with the low, contingent upon the township's approval, which will be tonight.
Can any size boat go through that?
Not any size, no. This will be, so the bridge that it's replacing is a small timber bridge.
Yep.
That's quite a bit narrower than this, and so there's gonna be more width and there's gonna be more height under this one. So possibly boats that didn't get under the other one could get under this. We checked with some of the residents out there. They've never had an issue getting back around
Okay.
that island. So it's not a make or break either way. They can use it, but you are gonna see some boats that can easily get through this. And I think even a larger pontoon, if they were willing to put their canopies down, I think that they would have clearance under this. Just depends on where the elevation of the lake is at the time. There's actually quite a bit of water. It's like 9 feet deep in this area. So, it leaves a little bit of area above, but yeah, 14 feet is definitely wider than what they've got currently.
Well, I'll move to approve the low quote. Thank you for your diligence on, trying to be conservative and wait and.
Yeah, we try, so, good.
Second, continuing on township. approval.
Yes, continue, yeah.
Yep, and that shouldn't be a problem. We got a funding letter from the state that said everything is covered. The only thing that the township is on the hook for is the original 20,000, 10 for the approach grading, and 10 for the engineering. So didn't change for them at all. We got all the money through the state, so everything should be covered.
Any discussion? Not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes.
And our final thing, review and approve bid for Project SAP 029-649-002. And this is also a rebid. This is the storm sewer repair in Akeley. When we had let it last year, we only received the one bid, and it exceeded our estimate by quite a bit. And when you only get one, you're always kind of nervous that, you know, whether it's a good bid. And so we did reject it at the time, knowing that MnDOT was gonna come back through this year on the 34 project, and there would be some of the similar work, so it kind of made sense to kind of tie it together. You'll have a contractor in the area. And so we did that. They let their project the Friday before. We opened our bids last Tuesday, and we did receive 3 bids this year, which was good. Gladen Construction out of LaPorte ended up being the low at $411,384.50. And this is, what, a little over $100,000 less than the bid from last year. So kind of lucked out in holding off. It's not the same contractor that was the low as the last time, but I do believe that the other contractor is probably in as a sub on this. So I think it's a win-win deal, and for us, for municipal state aid money, it's definitely a win. So that would be our recommendation, is go with low for this job.
Who's doing 34? Any of these 3?
No,
I think, wasn't it Young?
Young Excavating, which is our number 2 bid. So that was kind of interesting that, but as you can see, I mean, you know, $28,000 difference. They took a pretty good swing at this one too, since they were gonna be in town. So I think that the philosophy on opening bids works, and it worked in this case, but yeah, no guarantee that one always gets it.
And you showed this to us. I don't remember. Is it longer than a block? I remember what it looks like.
It's about a block. Yeah, well, it's longer, like the block is the storm sewer repair, but then
Yeah.
we have some other, like, Cassaw 49 comes down from Trunk Highway 34, and then it hits the east-west, which is also our 49 that heads out kind of southwest of town. So we are doing the pavement resurfacing on that east-west stretch there too. So it's
that's part of the
probably,
bid.
I would say 2 blocks, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the low bid.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Anything else you want to add?
No, nothing exciting.
Yeah, nothing exciting.
Exciting.
Yeah. Okay, that's all we got.
All right, thanks, Jed.
Thank you.
And Jed?
Well, I know our roads are gonna be plowed, so thank you in ahead.
They'll be plowed, yep. Yeah, we'll set that up with them, yeah. We got some good news that we'll bring to you at some point. We got more federal money. We're always looking for that federal money, and so we'll kind of bring like a recap of everything we got going for the next 3 to 4 years with our federal money. It's just one of those things that we're proactive on it. We're trying to be prepared, have projects in the works, ready to go, and I think that's playing out very well for Hubbard right now. Yeah, another 1.4 million towards a bridge replacement that is up in the north end of the county. So we'll bring that to you in a kind of a little presentation, so. Thanks.
Thanks. Chip? You got the bulk of the meeting here, it looks like.
Good morning.
Morning.
The first item on the agenda is a request for a letter of support from the Northern Waters Land Trust that is working with several counties and tribal governments throughout the state of Minnesota on the acquisition of the Conservation Fund lands, formerly potlatch lands. And in Hubbard County, we're looking at approximately 1,849 acres of formerly potlatch lands scattered throughout the county. I did send a map out of where those are located throughout the town, throughout the county. And like I said, they're working with several different counties. So this is kind of a statewide approach, more than just one entity at a time, which the Lessard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Council likes to see that kind of cooperation amongst agencies. So It should hopefully help with that portion of it. I did go back and take a look at, we've acquired over the last 4 years roughly, roughly about 2,000 acres in conservation fund lands through different means, different agencies working with. And I took a look at some of the timber sales that we've sold on those lands already. We've already had 8 timber sales on those roughly 2,000 acres. And the county has already received, or will receive in the near future, over $145,000 in revenues just from those lands that we've done. And a lot of the lands in this 1,840 acres is, it's a lot of it's the same stuff. It's all pine plantations. And a lot of those are just nearing that first thin. And so there will be revenues that we can capture right away from the acquisition of these lands. And then that continues right on through, as we continue to manage those lands. So what I'm requesting is a approval for the county board chair to sign the letter of support for the 1,840 acres of rural vacant lands in Hubbard County. I know there's several other counties that are already provided their support for this project as well.
So Mark, for anyone listening from the public, if we decided not to do this, what would they move forward to do with the land then?
I think probably they would be looking at the DNR for acquisition, donate it to them. This is I think the 4th request that we've made as far as, acquiring potlatch lands. This is actually, I think, probably our last request. I think after this, we will have those lands that we were interested in. So there's, and I know the DNR is working through their projects as well, and they're, they're getting their acquisitions in line as well. My guess is that the DNR would look to the DNR for those lands. And if the DNR was not interested in them, they probably would be sold to private individuals. And there will be some potlatch lands left after we're done, and I think after the DNR is done. I think there are a certain number of acres that were just not really, they were a long ways away from, contiguous lands that we have, or the DNR has, and they might be just not desirable for either one of our agencies to acquire. I know Dave talked to me about recreation trails on these lands, and I did go back and take a look, and there, I think, are 6 parcels where there's an existing snowmobile trailer either on the property or adjacent to it. So I did email back Kathy Don Carlos from the Northern Waters Land Trust and the Conservation Fund people, and just mention that, that there needs to be some kind of statement in there that there are already existing grant and aid trails either on or adjacent to these parcels, that those need to be continued. So they're going to be going back and talking with the Lessard Sam's Council and making sure that those trails can continue on those lands, so.
And in the documentation, the word permanent was used, so we cannot ever sell these lands?
Cannot sell these lands, cannot encumber them further, which would be considered, if someone has private land behind it, county cannot grant an easement across it, cannot encumber it with a trail that's not already existing on there. So if you wanted to put in an ATV trail across those, which, I looked at where our existing trails are, there's not any ATV trails anywhere near these, so the ATV trails are not, I don't think would be an issue, but like I said, there's already existing snowmobile trails on or adjacent to them, so.
I got a couple questions. One of them is that you know, I prefer to see the county get this rather than DNR, but at the same time, I'd prefer land to stay private, but I believe Potlatch has already made attempts at selling all of their land to begin with, didn't they?
No, I don't believe so. You know,
They
they
had
were
a lot
kind of
on sale.
parceling them out. You know, they were getting rid of their worst stuff first. And, you know, what they had left was probably their prime pine lands. You know, they'd sold all their aspen lands pretty much other than the sheep ranch, which was, you know, kind of a special unit there. But, you know, they were in the process of just slowly doling those out over the course of time. They were interested in selling them such that the product that they've spent a lot of time and effort in and money into creating with the pine plantations, make sure that those would be managed and the timber would come back to their mill. You know, statewide, private lands typically are far less managed than our public lands. And so, you know, I think they saw the writing on the wall that if they wanted to get the timber off those lands, it would be better in their interest to have those lands in public management rather than private.
Yeah, I was in real estate when Potlatch started selling these lands, so some of these tracts I've seen on the market before, so yeah, they were offered for sale already. My other question is that we already acquired 2,000 more acres, and now this will make it another 1,800 acres. How is this affecting your workload for the current county employees? Is this going to throw you over the point where you need more help, or what?
No, I don't believe that it will. I mean, you know, I think we're managing our workload. Actually, our timber harvest levels are coming down just because of where we're at in our management plan. You know, adding these additional acres will probably keep us fairly steady as to where we're at. We will be in the need of looking at updating our management plan probably next year. And I think we'd held off on that because we've got this new forest inventory that's supposed to be coming online. And I kind of wanted to wait until that was complete. So it will be probably in 2024. My replacement hopefully will be coming to the county board requesting permission to advertise for hire a consultant to update our forest management plan. And they will include all of these lands in there as well.
So you don't believe that additional employees will be necessary?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't see that as an issue, no.
Okay. Any other questions?
Is most of these properties adjacent to some of our lands already?
Yes.
It
Yep.
kind of looked that way.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we were looking for, is we're trying to consolidate ownerships, you know, get areas where we already have a presence, and just try to, a little more efficient in management if you don't have so much line to run.
In the conversation about reviewing the lands that we own that can be made available for sale, Chip and I discussed and said we could put that on the agenda for the general government meeting in 2 weeks, just so that we're also reviewing that at the same point. If these things make more sense in public management, then which of the ones that we have make more sense in private ownership? Committed to increasing that as we did this year with the budget.
There was extensive discussion at MRC yesterday on this topic once again. You know, how it's, you know, in our case, it's a little different sometimes with the forest management, but in other parts of the state where there's no forest to manage, they're just not happy with all these land grabs, the way they
Yep.
describe it, and, you know, they get frustrated. And if we had to just rely on PILT, you know, it wouldn't be good for Hubbard County either, but there are times where it makes sense because of the forest product in there that we actually not only, you know, are meeting the needs of whatever organization buys these lands and wants to convey them, but it's also beneficial to some degree to the county too, where other ones aren't. So it's frustrating because you have no control over it, really.
you had mentioned one of the arguments that I have for a large company owning land was that they were able to develop the land for the product that they wanted. They don't have that assurance now. You know,
Right.
with it owned by a county or a DNR. You know, they got a lot of it into red pine because they wanted red pine for the mills.
Yeah. But they felt that their best chance at getting that to the market would be to have it in public management rather than in private, because private typically does not manage their lands as extensively as does public agencies. So that's, that I think was when the Trust for Public Lands, or for the Conservation Fund approached them regarding purchasing the bulk of their lands. And I think that was one of the selling points is that, they would acquire these lands and then try and get them back into public ownership for management. And that way, the mill would stand the best chance of continuing to be able to, get that product to their mill. They took the money that they got from the sale of these lands and they went down to southern United States and they bought up land down there. Frankly, your growing season is a lot longer. You can grow a tree a heck of a lot faster down in Arizona, believe it or not, than you can in Minnesota. And that's what they did, is they bought land in the southern United States, and they're growing their trees down there. As long as you got the mill up here, they're gonna still wanna feed that thing, so.
So when this forest management plan is written, you need to have input from the industry too.
Correct.
For the product that they need, or the raw material that they need for their product, for sure.
Well, and your comment is the only scary part about all of this, that, if we ever lose the mill around here, then all we have left is pilt.
Yep. So we gotta be
And
mindful,
the expense of still managing it.
very mindful of what the industry wants.
Yep.
As far as the raw material. Yep. Otherwise, this money that you're talking about for timber harvesting, it'll be gone. Yeah, any other questions?
Snowing.
Here it comes. So is this, oh yeah, you need an authorization for the chair to sign the letter.
I just have one more comment before we vote on that. And Jeff, I thank you for you two working on, the board asked that you would come forth with lands. Thank you for working diligently on that, so we're moving forward on that too. With that said, I'll move to approve.
As long as the language on the existing trails.
Yes, on the existing trails is added.
Yes.
Yeah, good point, Dave, thank you.
Is there a second?
I'll second if the language with the existing snowmobile trails is added.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
All right, next item on the agenda is quotes for the replacement of Sheriff's Deputies, Trail Deputy ATV. Existing ATV has got many miles on it and is starting to have some issues, mechanical issues. So we did get 3 quotes for a replacement ATV. Up North Power and Sports here in Park Rapids is the low quote at $7,743.99.
I'll move to approve the low quote.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Next.
Next item on the agenda is 4 easements across some tax forfeited land on the east shore or east side of Big Sand Lake. Private landowner is subdividing his parcels into 4 separate parcels, and we need to provide each of those parcels with a legal easement. This is basically the extension of the Granite Drive, which is currently, once you get past Glory Trail, is a private road. And been reviewed by myself, Jed, and Eric, and we see no problems with allowing an easement across this property.
So this will be permanent with the land. It'll go with
Correct.
the parcel.
Yep, it will run with the parcel, yes.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Not. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And the last thing on the agenda is a resolution to authorize determining an assessed value on the properties that we are proposing for land sale for this fall. We did get DNR approval, final DNR approval on all of these parcels. So we're just looking at the next step in the process as determining an appraised value for the property.
So this one, I was looking through there, this one on Donnybrook,
Yep.
what does anybody do with that?
Yeah, it's the road that is a separate parcel, and,
Because whoever would take that would obviously then take on all the maintenance of it.
yeah, well, and we'd like to sell it to
Township.
all of the landowners or all the lot owners in the development. So they each have a undivided interest or whatever, and so, unfortunately, there's a bunch of these out here. And we did clean up, there was a portion of it that actually went up the Township Road. And, we got that cleaned up through some legal channels. So the township is made whole. They don't have any dog in this fight as far as that portion of the road that's been cleared up. So now it's just that part within the development that, try and sell it and,
You're gonna have to have a really cheap price on it,
yeah.
like $1.
Yeah, well, my fear is that, everybody's gonna come back to us and says, well, now that it's a county tax forfeited road, well, you guys get to maintain it. Well, sure, if you don't mind it being maintained to the quality of a forest road, it ain't gonna get plowed in the winter. I mean, that's the problem with these things is we're not a road authority. We don't have to maintain them to a township road standard or any minimum standard. It basically is, we consider it as a forest road. And so when they come in and say that, well, it's yours, you gotta maintain it, fine, we'll maintain it to our standards. You're not gonna be able to get out in the winter, so.
No, and I know in Henrietta Township, they had, whenever there were 3 or 4 residents on a private road, they could petition to the township to have the township take it over, as long as the road was to township spec.
Right, and that's the issue with this, is this road was never developed to the township standards, and, unfortunately, the township would take it over if it was brought up to the specs that they require.
But then the landowner would actually have to give up a portion of their land to bring it up to specs.
Or at least improve the road.
Well, our township we adopted the county standards.
So at the beginning of the plating process, then that would be something that would have to look for, is to make sure that it meets the township standards before approving a plat?
Good idea.
Well, yes, number one. The second thing is, there should never be a plat that has a road as a separate parcel. It should always be, one undivided interest of all the lots within the plat.
We need to watch for that in any future ones.
Yeah.
If it's dedicated to the public, though, then it should be at minimum at the township specs. And if there's no township specs, it should be required to meet county specs.
And this just came down last Wednesday, the Maratska case, if you're familiar with that, where roads like this that if the township or whatever didn't take any action to continually keep those as a dedicated public road, there was a case that would turn that back and it would become whoever wanted to claim it. Fortunately, the Minnesota Supreme Court upheld the Smoratska case, and so these are safe now as far as, you know, continuing to be dedicated to the public. They're not gonna go back to being private, so. But it still leaves that issue of when they forfeit, how do you deal with them, so.
That one track that just says in finding the facts that the city of LaPorte is interested in, is that gonna be auctioned to them, or how is that gonna work?
Depends upon how they want to acquire it, or what they want it for. If it is a public use, meaning they're suggesting maybe a small campground or a parking lot for their public access. That means the public can use it, then we can convey it to the town, to the city or the village, free of charge. If they want to use it for housing development or blight reduction, then the county can sell it to them at a reduced cost. Or if they want to use it for city hall or fire department or something like that, again, would be reduced cost. Or if they want to use it as something other, maybe clean it up and flip it, then we have to sell it to them at cost, at market value. From what I understand is their thought is that they want to buy it either for, or they want to acquire it for either a public access for their boat ramp or for a small campground. Either one of those, the county could convey it to them at no cost.
So if I'm not mistaken, Chip, statute requires that we notify cities of tax forfeited properties available in their communities before they're listed for sale in case they want to acquire them for any one of these purposes.
Right, and that, when we classified these parcels as conservation or non-conservation, every township, every village that these lands are located in get a notice, and that's how they respond to us and say, hey, this might be a parcel that we might be interested in, so.
Yeah, I know
So
that-
once they send us a letter that says that this is our intended use, we have to remove it from possible sale for at least 60 days and then work with the city to do whatever we're gonna do with it.
Then they have a period of time, 2 or 3 years, I think it is, to develop it along the intended use.
Yep.
No, the public access there has got pretty limited parking,
Yeah,
Garfield Lake there, so I
Yep.
could see where they could expand that.
yeah, and this is just down the road from the access, so it would make great parking for their public access.
When do you anticipate the auction for some of these tracks? There's a couple pretty valuable ones.
I've tentatively scheduled it for August 14th. But I'm trying to work through all these processes as fast as I can, so as much of it's done, so when my replacement comes in, basically grab the file and hopefully most of it's already done already.
Okay. Any further questions?
I move to approve the resolution.
I'll second.
Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes.
And one other item, you will remember that I sent you a email that Deep Lake Park has been officially designated as a regional park now. Grant applications came out yesterday, and I kind of looked through those. I don't think I've got enough time left here to go through the whole grant application, but I did start taking a look at one of the projects that we need to do before we really get into any development is SHPO review. So I'm trying to work on a request for a State Historic Preservation Office review of the whole 437 acres, since this whole project will cover the whole area. So try and get that done, so we've got at least that part of it done before I leave, so.
That brings up one question. The grant application for fiscal year '25, that needs to be done by the end of July.
End of July.
And that needs to be coordinated, because since you're leaving, gotta make sure that's done. So, yeah, quite well aware of it.
Yeah, and we'll very likely rely on our consultant to help with the development of most of those grant applications.
Okay.
I think that that's typical.
Okay.
And I think we have a continuing opportunity with Crosby to continue to do those things for us. So
Okay.
we should not have a lack or a drop of anything in this transition because of that, because we've got several continuing players.
Okay, good. All right. Anything else? Thank you, Chip.
All right.
Okay, Josh.
Good morning.
Morning.
A couple items this morning. The first item I have is to review and approve quotes for a forklift. We're looking to purchase a new forklift for our department. This has been a budgeted purchase, and we'd be trading in a 2015 forklift with a trade value of $20,000. Went out to the typical companies that we normally obtain quotes for, and I was only able to obtain one quote for this forklift from FM Forklift Sales and Service out of Fargo, North Dakota. And the quote was $53,951, and with the $20,000 trade-in, would have a net of $33,951. The ETA for the forklift, the salesman was saying was probably going to be about 10 months. There might be a few things they can do to get it to us quicker, but that's where we were at. Kind of the other company we were working with, we were looking at an 18-month lead time, and they got back to me and just said they weren't interested in submitting a quote at this time. So my recommendation would be to go with the quote we received from FM Forklift Sales and Service out of Fargo.
Josh, does this seem reasonable?
Yeah, we normally, we're operating Toyotas right now in our fleet, and, the price went up since our last one, 10% or so, but it's still, reasonable with how things have been increasing in price, so.
And then I'm assuming we'll continue to use the 2015 model until the new one comes in?
Yep, right now it's our backup machine, so we use it as needed at the South Transfer Station. And then once that comes in, we'd shift our daily user at the South Station to the backup, and, but as it's just replacing our backup machine now, it's, not too concerned about the lead time either, so.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. Got a second? I'll second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes.
All right, and the next item I have is to review and approve quotes for a new well construction. We're looking to do a replacement well as part of our plan to address MDH exceedances in boron and manganese down gradient to the south landfill. We received 2 quotes for this project, with the low being Elsner Well Drilling of Monaga at $14,758.50, which includes a 20% contingency. And both quotes were quoted for a 150-foot deep well. I did have money set aside planning to do this for 2023, and this would be our 4th well that we've put in, and as of right now, that's probably where we'll be sitting, just so you guys are aware of that. So possibly one more, but their levels have been maintaining for the last couple of years, so.
These new wells are really good.
Yep, they're doing what they were intending and needing to do, so.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Second, any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any just not approved? Okay, thank you.
And we'll, I guess with this, we'll probably be coming back, this spring yet, just, this well and the last 2 wells we completed, we'll have some landscaping to come back and do. So I'll probably have a quote for that, in the next meeting or two, so.
Thanks, Joss.
All right, thank you.
Ryan?
Morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. This morning I have for you this, the opioid settlement update, and we have, need to get authorization to approve the resolution allowing myself or Jeff to sign stuff for the board in regards to the opiate settlements. Just an update on that leading up to that is there's been more settlements than just the first one that we got. In fact, I just had Kay check, double check my numbers, and we currently have in our account $210,600. I got an email this morning that the state has initiated. Where is it at here? The state has initiated that they are moving forward with 3 other or 4 other. So many emails. Sorry.
5 of them.
5 more drug companies, and so we anticipate that we're going to get a considerable amount more money, and it's going to continue for quite some time. So what I have, I'm talking with Marley about possible funding, some different things for opioid use, and what I want to do, and I talked to Jeff a little bit about it, but put together kind of a task force or a group per se to talk about some different needs, to include, Jeff and Corey, and Marley and myself probably, just to talk about trying to figure out how we can utilize the funds, going over all of the different requirements that they have. So it's going to be considerably more than we had originally thought. So it'll be really good to get some of this money and use it for helping the citizens of Hubbard County with some of that the results of the opiate epidemic.
And this resolution is generalized, so you'd be giving us authority to sign on to this current statewide settlement and future statewide settlements that come up, so we don't have to, basically, if you look at a resolution authorizing staff to execute necessary documents to participate in statewide MOAs with these settlements, so.
And that's because they're coming up, I didn't realize there was that many drug companies that were involved. And so they come up quick, and we don't get a ton of time.
We don't get a ton of lead time, nope. So.
Not at all, so.
This came up Friday, and Brian has been authorizing all this, but I'm still listed as the primary on it, so the DocuSign documents are sitting in my inbox waiting for me to sign. And we coordinated on this last week and said, yep, we can get in front of the board, so. The due date for this one is 2 weeks from today, so we're okay now, but they do come up quickly.
Now, this original settlement, wasn't that like for over 18 years?
Yeah, it is 18 years at 37,000, roughly, I think 37,800. So we got that. We got one for 2023. We then got the one for 2024, and then all these other ones that they settled on already prior to the ones that we're getting this authorization for. It's going to be a lot.
Okay. And are they all gonna be like spread out for 18 years, or?
I have to dig into those, but the majority of them are going to be long-term. I don't know if it's going to be 18 years, but The original one is 18 years, and there's another one that I read that was 18 years, but I haven't dug. It's a lot of stuff to read into a lawsuit. Holy buckets. So.
We can try to give you an estimate of what our annual, when he says it's a lot of money, it's not like $1 million a year. But
No.
instead of $37,000 a year, it could be, I'd have to look at the number.
Could be 80.
If it's double that, I wouldn't be surprised.
Right.
I would be surprised if it was much more than double that to this point, because these are the smaller settlements.
Right.
But they're several of them lumped into one bit, so.
Yeah, that's what I mean by a lot of money for compared to what it was. The 37, like I said, it could be double.
We'll review that and provide an update on what the
Yep.
dollar impact is as we're signing off on these. I don't know that we get to see all of it until we sign off on it.
Correct. Correct.
It's a lot of money to the average person.
It's a lot of money to social services, I'll tell you that. It's, and public health. I mean, public health is going to be a big one. That's actually a lot of the other counties that have public health within social services. They're the ones that are, utilizing and administering the funds. So we're unique.
Will you have any commissioners on that board?
We definitely can, for sure.
Because I'm thinking, who's got Hubbard in prevention? Maybe something like that, but when the time comes.
Yep, right. Yep, absolutely.
Okay,
I'll move to approve the resolution.
all right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I have one item, and then I have an item that's kind of wrapped up in my administrator report. I've got a little more to report on today than usual. But the first one is the HLDC board met last week, and they're moving forward with a housing project that I think we've talked about, that Mary was here, and they talked about the tax abatement to support that 58-unit facility out on the east side of town. And now we're getting right down to push come to shove and having to pay for things as we walk through it. So they passed a resolution asking the board to authorize the release of funds that were committed during last year's budget project for economic development, for the pre-development, the architectural and civil engineering costs that you see there. When we look at what we did for the allocation of Enbridge funds, we set aside $500,000 for economic development in 2023, $600,000 for current capital projects for the county for 2023, and $500,000 to be used later for capital for the county. And the only real placeholder we had relative to economic development was $300,000, basically as seed money for this housing project is what was on there. So this is a first portion of that request in actual dollars is the development cost for that. I just talked with Mary again yesterday and this morning, and we're working diligently to put the schedules together for the abatement process, for the bidding process, for the permitting process with the city, and to land on a construction date that actually gets these things built in 2023. And we're kind of up against the deadline, but we still think that they can happen. So these are the first pieces. The balance of that money would be requested against, probably as either collateral against or commitment towards securing the rest of the financing that the project requires. But this is the first dollars. This pre-development cost is what we need to be able to get the bid documents out.
Any questions? Any motion?
I'll move to approve.
Have a second?
Well, I'll second unless Ted wants to. Okay.
Okay, any more discussion, questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And against, same sign? Okay, that's approved.
So then in administrator's report, I've got a a couple of items. And the first would be relative to Heritage Living Center. Our representation agreement, our listing agreement for the sale of Heritage Living Center expired last week. And the listing agent sent us a 60-day extension that would extend through to the end of May. And I'd recommend that we approve that, but I want to tell you the second piece of this first so that you have the full story when you're doing that. We also got notice on Friday that Ecumen is serving notice that they're not intending to renew our management contract for Heritage Living Center. So our current contract runs through September 28th of this year, after which we will not have a management agreement in place, and we'll need to deal with that. So Commissioner Christensen and Delahunt and I met yesterday to review kind of what the steps and the timeline and the process are. And working back from September 28th to where we are is not really that terribly much time. So if we keep a listing up for another 60 days, extend through the end of May, that would be as far out as we could go with that, because either we have an actual offer in hand and we're negotiating a settlement and purchase, or we have to be pursuing another management agreement, just from the timeline. And in truth, we need to be developing the RFP right now and have that ready to go out before the end of April or by May 1st, so that we could have responses by June 1st to be able to have somebody else in place with 30 or 60 days left to facilitate a handoff of that management contract. So that's kind of the timeline that we're working on. We are working with, so Heritage sent notice to all of the publicly owned facilities they have management agreements with, and they're discontinuing managing publicly owned facilities. So the Sunnyside facility in Becker County, the facility in Itasca County also got similar notices. So they'll be looking for management of their facilities as well. So, long story short, we're working on a draft RFP. We'll run that through the executive committee for the Heritage Board and the Heritage Board to approve by the end of the month. Probably have that here in 2 weeks, in not a absolutely final version, but probably ask you to approve that letting of that RFP by May 1st upon approval of the Heritage Living Center Board, which meets, of course, the Tuesday after, the fourth Tuesday of the month. So we'll have to coordinate that. But to get that out by May 1st, we're gonna need to move quickly. I already got a draft RFP from Becker County relative to the same thing, and I'll review with the administrators in both Becker and Itasca. There's an opportunity to coordinate there. Maybe we end up, maybe somebody's interested in the bulk of business in managing these three facilities, if we don't get an offer on the facility. The listing agent recommended the 60-day notice because he is actively working with some parties who are interested, and he believes will bring an offer to the table. If we didn't have, and I needed to say that, if we didn't have that, we would not be extending.
I was gonna say that I'd be voting against extending if we didn't have something in the pipeline here.
Yep,
Okay,
he is.
that's important to me.
He is negotiating with 2 or 3
Okay.
people who have expressed interest. And if he didn't have that, I wouldn't recommend extending the 60 days. But I think it makes sense to extend the 60 days so that he can continue to find out if we're gonna get an offer out of one or more of them. And then if we have a valid, signed, ready to go offer by before the end of May, working towards closing after that point, I think we could negotiate. So I'm glad I remembered it. I'm glad I anticipated your question because
I was gonna,
because it's
when
because
you were
it's
done, I was
important.
already ready to say, I'm gonna be against this.
It's an important piece to note that we wouldn't be asking for the extension if we didn't
Okay.
think there was a reason for it. But we do still believe the timeline is there, but we have to be developing the RFP as we're waiting for these things to happen. Worst case scenario, we send out an RFP on May 1st, we get an offer on May 3rd, and we determine that it's a good one, and we get responses to the RFP, and we simply say that we no longer need those services. So we can put the cart before the horse a little bit here, and if it works out one way or the other, then we're covered both ways.
Does he need, did really the listing agent need the whole 60 days, or can he find out in less than that?
I'd like to give him the 60 because of one of the things that he's working on, I know is gonna take a little bit of coordination. But putting the 60-day on it is the hard line to simply say, anybody that's interested, this is the opportunity to make an offer. Beyond that, this might not be available. And he needs to translate that to the interested parties so that they know there's a deadline. Because we've been kicking back and forth. What I'm getting is, I keep having conversations, they keep saying they're gonna put something together. Oh, they're gonna coordinate it with this. A lot of what is happening is a repositioning in the marketplace. People are not interested in buying our facility, they're interested in leveraging multiple facilities. And really, that's all I can say, is some of these things take a little more coordination than an individual buying an individual property. That's not what this is gonna end up being. But we do have valid interested parties.
Okay.
So I would just want board action to allow me to sign the 60-day extension of the listing agreement.
In 60 days, you don't foresee it tripping up an opportunity of getting a management firm?
No, because we'll be running that track concurrently. And having it listed or having it for sale, I don't think that's gonna change who's interested in putting their name in the hat
Okay.
as management.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the 60-day extension.
Any
Second.
second? Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign? Okay, that passes.
So then we reviewed the HLDC request, and as I mentioned, I met with Mary yesterday and we were looking at the timelines. I've got my homework here with Todd from Ellers to put together the dates of where we are, when we think we're gonna do bids, when we're gonna think we're gonna do this, so that he can back up and do an abatement timeline for us. What I will tell you is that the school board did vote a couple of weeks ago in support of participating in the abatement to help fund this project. So we've got the city and the county and the school who both nodded and said, yes, we would support an abatement on the new value of that property going forward as a way to help finance that. The other pieces that are being worked through are, the property's gotta be transferred from HRA to HLDC. We gotta go through permitting with the city. I'll be working with Mary to develop bid documents to make sure that that all gets done and documented appropriately. And we're really still hoping that we're either at a July 1st or August 1st construction start. So that's really moving fast for this type of work. The fact that we started having this conversation, I don't know, sometime since there was snow on the ground. And that we're at the point of having a conversation about construction in summer of 2023 is moving really fast, and it'll be a really good thing. HR updates, we do have an IT director who's gonna be starting on May 1st, so that's good. And we will be having, we have applicants for the land commissioner position. I think I have 3 to review. I don't know that there's more that have come in or not have come in. From a first blush, I look and I see that we have qualified applicants. And I believe we responded, I said my availability next week would be Thursday or Friday. I think that ended up working with the 2 of your schedules, so we'll be finalizing that. I'm probably just schedule these on Thursday if it works. So we'll probably be having interviews next week, Thursday, to fill the vacancy in land commissioner.
Good.
I guess that's it. Half of my notes are just the things to remind me not to forget to do them after the board meeting today.
Okay. And prior to Thursday, you'll send out
Yes.
the material
Yep.
to Ted.
I will do the applicant review today and get that back to Mike, and then Mike will get you the rest of the documents that you need so that you're prepared for that.
I'd like to look them over first.
Yep.
before.
The first thing that you'll get is probably a calendar request to block out an afternoon or a morning on that day, whatever ends up working. I anticipate that the interview committee then would be, the three of us, and Gina would be there as well. She usually participates with the department head interviews. So that's what I think I have, unless you have questions. I know there's a lot going on in the background right now.
Sure enough. All right, and then we're on to committee reports. Who wants to go first?
You wanna go ahead?
You want to?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's see what we have here. Just to get you updated on Heritage. Our meeting at the end of February, our CMS overall star remained the same at 3, health inspection remained the same at 3, quality measure remained the same at 4, staffing remained the same at 4. Minnesota nursing home report card remaining the same at 3. We had 4 hires, 1 termination. We still have 7 open FTEs, 2 agency contracts. Let's see, applicants were 15, and I think I remember telling you last time that the agency contract is down to 1 in March. And then there's some per diem contract work still going on too. So that should be done pretty quick, which is good news. Had 15 applications. Let's see, occupancy. Heritage Manor has 13.5 out of 26. Cottages 16 out of 18. Again, this is as the end of February. Heritage Living Center 35.1, and we're basically staffed for 35, I believe, right now. So we continue to work on applications and hirings to try and inch that up. And hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks at the most, we'll know on our VA status too, which could make a big difference. So we're kind of planning for that might make a difference, and trying to just keep the staff process going to try and be able to hire us what we need on a timely manner. EBITDA, Heritage lost 31,785. The cottages were positive 24,264. Heritage Living Center was positive 15,885. So total combined, we have a positive $8,364 in cash flow for the first time in a long time.
Yay.
I know, who would get excited over 8,000? We will.
And if I could add to that, I should have the March numbers before our April 18th meeting, and then I would be able to give you a first quarter financial impact of Heritage. Summarize them from the first 3 quarters, because these numbers are good and it's a good indicator. But we also want to track from January to 1 to hear what's our expectation and what is the actual outcome. But we'll include those reports.
While it's positive cash flow, it's not taking into account the fact that you've got a plan for depreciating assets to replace and debt service. So you need that, we eventually got to get that cash flow way up there, but at least it's positive for the first time in many years.
Moving in the right direction.
Yeah, good.
Which tells you that, the operation is turning in the right direction.
That could either attract a buyer or a new management firm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the goal is, once we get pre-changes that we made, kind of the magic number to generate enough cash flow, if you were operating completely efficient with no contract work, was 42 in the nursing home, probably at least 80-85% occupancy in the other ones, then you would cash flow enough to handle your debt service. So we got a ways to go yet, but again, it's positive news. The strategy and the plan is working, just not as quickly as we would have liked.
You think cash flow can reach a point where if the county does keep ownership, that we can accelerate the debt payment?
I think eventually, because you still have an aging populations and the demographics are in our favor long term. It's just how long will it take to get there?
Because if we were full, we could pretty much almost double occupancy.
Yeah. And the reality is, you know, if we didn't have the competition and addition beds in the county, we would have been out of this right away, but, and that may change in the future too, that changes the dynamic also. And if you have another assisted living facility comes in, where does that put us in the chain of things again? So there's a lot of unknowns there. It all depends on, you know, the need and then the capacity that's available, so.
So one way or another, the evaluation of the current debt against that should be reviewed, because the way it was initially, the way the debt was taken out, it was back-end loaded. So the debt payments increase every year through the balance of the term of the debt service. Because we had the new market tax credits on the front end of it. So, at the time the debt was taken out, it was the intention that it was gonna be restructured. It was gonna be paid down, $2 million were gonna be paid down, and then it was gonna be restructured at that point, and we haven't done that because we didn't know what transaction it was gonna take relative to a sale or anything. So when things shake out this year, we may be at a point of looking at restructuring that debt or looking at other payment options.
And that might even be difficult with the cost of money now.
Yes, it would be more challenging. A year ago, it would have been relatively
That's
easy,
where we're at.
but we might be better off just knowing
Yeah.
that.
Anything else?
I think that was it. If I have something else, I'll pipe in at the end. Go ahead.
HLDC met on the 27th, and Anthony Schaffhauser was there and shared the employment numbers for Hubbard County. That was really interesting. So what it boils down to, so the unemployment rate in Hubbard County, so that's people actively looking for work, is at 2.2%. And there's a 2.5 job vacancy for every job seeker currently in Hubbard County. And the numbers that they used were every employer that contributed to the unemployment insurance. That's how they broke that down. So the signs that we see up, workers needed, we need people to move in or multiply or something, because it's a legitimate
He did kind of
vacancy.
mention that Hubbard County was a little bit of an anomaly.
Yes, he did.
And that it was from all measures of that, it's in good shape compared to many.
Yeah, and I think our median income is one of the higher ones in the surrounding counties.
And then the Mojave meeting on Friday, two really encouraging things. So the pay raise is at 5.6%, and the board, at the recommendations of the executive committee, voted to give a $1.30 per hour raise to each employee instead of giving a percentage, because then that was more positive to the lower wage earners, especially during a time of recession and inflation. And then something I thought was really cool, they had 2 Head Start parents working in their office, training them on office skills. And they sent them to the job fair with ready-made, they had helped prepare resumes ahead of time. And the job fair, the people at the job fair, the businesses were so impressed with not only the way they could carry on conversation, but they already had their resume done. And that has resulted in a job offer for one of the people. And so Liz talked about how they're gonna try expand that program, but how even in the smallness of it, it's affected 2 families in a real positive way. And Mojave really is dedicated to the whole family approach of trying to move people out of poverty into self-sufficiency. So I was really excited about this success story there. And then, do you want to touch on the public forum for Land of Dancing Sky? We talked about the funding that possibly is going to be diverted.
Yeah, the Minnesota Board of Aging.
Because there's a comment period that we should all go on and comment on.
Yeah, the current formula, they're looking at changing that, and they're looking at more of the population numbers versus need. You see in the rural areas, you've got, in a sense, more need. We've got There's examples of, say, if, in Warren, Minnesota, or some small town like that, you get a restaurant that closes, and they're the ones that have been providing home-delivered meals. Well, if that restaurant closes and there's not another restaurant in the city to handle the load, those people are out. But in the Twin Cities area, metropolitan areas, you have a restaurant closes, well, then they go to the next restaurant and, you know, get kind of services like that. Yeah, but they're looking at, like Shar had mentioned there, I don't have any numbers written down, but yeah, the formula will affect us. It seems like it was, I wanna say a couple 100,000 less this coming year for services. And the need is still there, so it's important to email these people or write and say that we still need these services and still need the funding.
So the Enterprise, I think, was it last Saturday, carried an article? Yeah, on who to contact with this, and Karen, who is on the Mojave board and with you on Land of Dancing Skies, I can't remember her last name, but she gave this example. She said, so we're using our money here for food, but they're gonna, if they reallocate it according to population, they're already talking down in the cities, they're gonna add equipment.
Yeah.
And so that explains just the disparity between looking at what rural needs and that, and so we do really need to comment.
Yeah. Feeding our seniors is more important.
Yeah. I'm done.
Done?
Oh,
Okay.
I did find out one thing. Did you know the Hubbard County Soil and Water got an 8% increase this year?
Yeah,
Is that something you were gonna,
Well,
that
that
came up
came-
in the Mojave meeting.
oh, okay, that came out of AMC too.
Okay.
See, I've been to several of different things since the last meeting. One of them was we had our first park board meetings for the season. A lot of the pickleball club just can't wait for the snow to finally melt so they can get out there and use it. But they're already making plans though. They came, a member of the club came and requested, they've been reserving 4 courts. They want to reserve all 6 on Monday morning for their little laddering get-together. So yeah, the board approved that for them. A lady from Trinity Church in Lake George community requested permission for a food stand to be at the Blueberry Festival. And the park board recommended waiving the fee for that, so, you know, that'll have to come before us for that to be approved, so, you know, we'll probably see that on an agenda real soon. Ferris Park, they're gonna be putting in a disc golf course, and they've got the locations already GPS for it. Again, like other things, they'll be waiting for the snow to disappear. That's it for that. Yeah, we had the not AMC, the MRC meeting yesterday. You mentioned one about SWCD getting more funding. Transportation, I think it was $9 billion, and a lot of funding for that. There's several ways they're going to be increasing revenue. 75% flat fee on all deliveries. That should rate, of taxable products. You know, like Amazon sends you something that's taxable, there'll be a 75% fee on that. They estimate that'll raise $200 million. Metro area will get a 0.75% sales tax increase for their transit and roads. There'll be 100% dedication of all sales tax that comes from the sale of auto parts, and that'll be phased in over 5 years. The other one is you're gonna be paying a little bit more on sales tax when you buy a car. And that's gonna go from, I think it's currently 6.5% to the 6.85%.
So I figured that out on a $40,000 vehicle. It's $1,500.
$1,500, ooh,
It's significant,
that is significant, yeah.
yeah.
they should have applied some of those billions, 12 billion or so that they had in reserve instead of raising more taxes. But-
Well, and they're raising our license tab fees. People are gonna be in the sticker shock for that too, and so,
Yep.
yeah.
And I know you two were there. Anything else that you can think of?
Just some concern from rural legislators or rural commissioners that it seems like with the surplus and stuff, that there's kind of a feeding frenzy to spend the money.
Yep.
And then, you know,
And it'll be ongoing expenses.
well, that's a problem. A lot of it could be ongoing expenses, which will set up big problems later. Because you won't have that surplus to spend it down in future years. So there was a lot of concern about that, mostly coming from rural commissioners.
Yeah.
But whether the legislature's listening or not, the MRC lobby folks kind of thought it was falling on deaf ears. Frustrating.
Yeah.
We'll see where it all shakes out. It isn't done yet.
And, well, then, the other thing that I did, Jeff and I went to an AMC Leadership Summit last week. I thought it was quite educational. One leadership and working together skit that we had was a magic trick. And something I didn't learn, I should have learned in the Navy is not raise your hand to volunteer to do something, because I ended up doing it in front of the whole group. But we went over okay.
That took great courage.
Gonna fly under the radar, Tom.
At least I got a number of people came up to me and said, "Oh, wow, you had us convinced on that one." So, yeah. Ted?
Okay, let's see, I'll, kind of with the Dancing Sky, I participated in the Region 2 Area Agency on Aging. The the Minnesota Board of Aging is combining Regions 2 and 4, which the meeting last Thursday was gonna be in Clearbrook. And I'm at my regular job, and by the time I realized I should have been already driving there, I didn't, which ended up working out because once the Zoom meeting started, they thanked everybody to be able to transfer from an in-person meeting to Zoom on such short notice. So if I would have drove there, I would have had to have tried to find Wi-Fi somewhere so that I could have been part of the meeting. So that worked out for me. And as part of that meeting, of course, we elect new officials. I was nominated to be vice chair, and I thanked them because I was vice chair last year. But I told them that I'm not gonna be part of this committee this year, that Tom Kruger would be. So I didn't vote you for vice chair. Let's see. And like I say, they're combining Regions 2 and 4 to basically save administrative costs and staffing. We kind of went through the bylaws, and the bylaws talk about you have to have a minimum of 10 people, and the most you can have is 18. But if you combine the two, so we changed the bylaws to still you need to have 10 there, but you can't have any more than 36. Because if you're combining 2 and 4, people would have to drop out of the meeting if we couldn't have that many number of people there. I think there was 20-some people at this meeting. They talked about the carryover for Title III-B, which is from part of the Older Americans Act that had to do with feeding the elderly. Part of the carryover was because we got COVID dollars and we were spending the COVID dollars first. One of the places that's gonna benefit is living at home in Park Rapids here. They're gonna be getting an increase for homemaker program there, and I believe for some reimbursement on transportation program. Let's see, and then what we talked about a little bit earlier about the budget cuts, they're serving, the rural area is out serving the metro area as far as home delivered meals and stuff like that. So that was all I had for that meeting. And then we had the Mississippi Headwaters Board. We sent out a letter of asking the legislature for increased funding. Also had a press release from Pete Staubers. They've got a land exchange that they want to do on Lake Winnebagosh. One of the resorts there wants to trade 38 acres in exchange for 13 acres. So it would be a win for the resort, be a win for the National Forest Service. There was support on this last year, and we were kind of surprised that it didn't get taken care of last year. There was also a variance request. This was for Hubbard County here, and I'm gonna butcher this name. It's Camp Kamaja. It's on the south end of Big Wolf Lake. It was basically an after the fact variance request. They had increased a couple of cabins and started to increase 2 cabin sizes and making a second shower. They were all out of the first tier, and the setting there. The problem was it was an after the fact. You know, they'd already started building before, and then they actually called and asked, do we need a permit after they'd already started. Our local Board of our Board of Adjustment and Equalization Board of Adjustment, the variance board anyhow okayed all that. And like I say, it was pretty cut and dried. It was like 98 acres campground, and to add 2 additions, each 16 feet by 16 feet, and a 16 by 12 shower. And these, you don't even see these from the lake and stuff like that, so it, like I say, if they would've just asked for a permit to begin with, it would've been an easy deal. Let's see. The MPCA contacted the Mississippi Headwaters Board. They've got a kiosk that it shows like what we do and other areas of the counties that cover the Mississippi Headwaters Board. The kiosk is mobile, so we talked about at different county fairs, it could go to those different county fairs if they don't coincide, and perhaps the local soil water boards would be welcome something like that at their displays or whatever at county fairs. We've started our executive director is reaching out to local high schools that are on the Mississippi River and to discuss what we do at the Mississippi Headwaters Board. I've had good results there. Students are really interested. And some of them have already are talking about career paths in natural resource management type stuff. And let's see, and they talked about signage again on the Mississippi River, and we did discuss there again in Hubbard County. We've got the Coffee Pot Landing, but when you go north of the Coffee Pot Landing, there's a floating bog. So if you're not a experienced canoeist or kayaker, and the river doesn't go this way anymore, it goes this way, but you don't know that, you can get lost in those areas. But there, like I said, as far as doing signage, we normally say this is a point of access. It's X number of hours to the next boat landing type of an issue. And for us there, the next one would be, I believe it's Bear Den in Beltrami County. So we're talking about whether or not to do signage in that point. But we have been doing it in other areas. And let's see. Oh, and we also talked about the emails that we got about the Keep It Clean campaign for the Mississippi River. And we talked about how for us up here, it would be better if we did some kind of a cleanup in August instead of in the spring when the water levels are high. You know, there's the access to the river to try to clean up some of the stuff would be better in August than in the next couple, whenever spring's gonna come here this year. And then we're also, our executive director has been participating in a lot of the One Watershed, One plans that are directly affect because of the Mississippi River. The next one will be the Upper Mississippi, which is in the Grand Rapids area. And that one is starting up as well as the Crow Wing one is starting up. But I don't think Tim will be participating because that's a Crow Wing River watershed. And as far as community reports, that's all I have. I just had a question to the board. If you've been getting any property tax calls, I was actually home Friday, got home from work and was looking at mine when I got my first call on my home phone because it was a resident that knew me and of course just looked up my number in the phone book. And so I've gotten half a dozen calls concerned about the property values and the property taxes. And I told them, talk to their assessor, then they can go to their township boards, kind of giving them the procedures and the reasons why. That we do sales studies, and the sales studies show that the properties are selling for a lot more, and we have to follow the Department of Revenue rules. And you try to. I think a lot of people are just happy that they've got somebody to talk to, and my taxes have gone up too in property values, so we're all in this together. And that's all I got.
Mr. Chair, I have one more thing. I attended the child care forum that was put on by the League of Women Voters, and Lisa and Jennifer from Social Services did a really nice job of presenting, how to get licensed and the criteria and stuff. And then there was, 3 other people on the panel that did child care. One had been in a long time, one was just getting into it, and one was a parent. The disappointing thing was, it's the same story, the 14th verse, of trying to figure this out. People aren't interested, or, it takes too much and there's not enough funding. And no one brought up regulations, other than there's a lot of paperwork.
I read that article in the Enterprise.
Yeah, so, it was informative, but to resolve this, it's gonna take some digging deep, people willing to stand and ask the legislature to do some things differently. So.
Jeff, this snowing's reminded me of one thing. I think we've discussed, we're right now, or it has been, and where the chair has the responsibility of declaring whether or not employees come in, and tomorrow morning sounds iffy. So has that been delegated to you yet, or is it still in my hands?
It still comes from the recommendation from the sheriff and the highway engineer as to what that looks like. The policy simply says that in the absence of any notice, people should use their better judgment on whether or not it's safe to travel. I don't anticipate that we would be closing facilities tomorrow, and we're not gonna stop providing services. So a reminder this afternoon that people should be cognizant of road conditions and make their own determinations as to whether it's safe to travel. Fall short of needing to make a determination as to whether or not county offices are closed. I'll be here.
Okay. Then if it does get so bad, leave that into your decision then?
If the sheriff and or the highway engineer contact me and say it needs to happen, then I will make that decision and let you know.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, 98% chance today and 94 tomorrow.
Guess when I see a weather forecast that says driving will be extremely difficult to impossible, I pay attention to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my wife's in Fargo. I don't know how she's gonna get home. I would make, on upcoming meetings to note, I would just kind of address the agenda for next week's work session. Right now, we're gonna have a brief emergency management planning update from Scott Williams. I think somebody asked about that when we were talking about the emergency planning committee. Talked with Corey and Scott, and he's gonna give an update on where they're at in the planning process. We have Joe Johnson from Parroting Solutions gonna give a presentation. And then I'll have an updated version of the capital improvement plan for everybody to review and look to as opposed as to form. And our goal would be to have that capital improvement plan approved before we start budgeting for the new year.
Anything else? Do you have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Okay, we're adjourned.